Welcome into the install with Greg Cosell of NFL Film. Super wildcard weekend in the books. Greg, divisional matchups on the horizon. It's going to be a fun one, but we finally have a general manager here in Tennessee, which is the big news. Ran Carthon officially made official as we tape this on a Wednesday morning. Somebody who's very, very well regarded in the league. So I just wanted to kind of get your general sense of the situation, given that he's coming from a very interesting place.
Yeah, and also I'm fortunate enough to know Ran Carthon a little bit, spend a little time with him at the combines over the years. I think what's really interesting is where he's coming from, because he's been part of sort of the Kyle Shanahan group and the John Lynch group out with the 49ers. He's been there since 2017. And so I think when you look at what they do offensively, which I'm sure is the thing that fans of the Titans are thinking about offensively, what is it going to look like going forward? If they think about the Niners, they'd probably say, hey, if we could look like that to some degree, we'd be pretty good. So that's his most recent background, as I said, going back to 2017. And again, you need people in place, but you always have to start with some kind of philosophy. Obviously, coaches always say, hey, you have to coach to the players you have. You can't force a philosophy, but you have to start with an approach, a philosophy, a methodology. And obviously, he's bringing that with him. That's what he knows well. That's his most recent last, 6 years, 7 years. Mm-hmm. And I'll be very curious to see how he goes about kind of, building the team, because say what you want. The reality is they did lose, what was it, 7 in a row or 8 in a row to end the season?
Oh, it's 7 in a row, Greg. Don't put 8 on me.
Right. So, you can say what you want. They've been a good team. There's a lot of solid pieces in place. But as Bill Parcells always used to say, your record is what your record is. So they did lose 7 in a row. So you can try to sugarcoat that any way you want. But, obviously that's not good enough.
No, and personnel among the biggest questions that they have. So that philosophical approach that he and Mike Vrabel organizationally, they agree on. And once they start to put more of the coaching staff in place, obviously offensive coordinator still an outlier right now. It's a very, very interesting marriage that they're going to have. And I'm looking forward to seeing it play out, as I know many Titans fans.
Yeah, and I think the offensive coordinator is going to be fascinating. I think that's going to say a lot as to, I don't want to say, look, Ran, from what I know of him, just personality-wise, I've never worked with him, so I can't speak to that. But I don't think he's a my way or the highway, So I'm very curious to see how it works with Mike and Ran in terms of choosing, an OC, because that is a really important position now on this team, how they're going to play going forward.
Absolutely, and a lot of interesting candidates, a lot of jobs opening for
a lot of jobs and a lot of candidates. Yep.
At this point. So we'll see how that develops. In the meantime, football ongoing very much. An incredible weekend. Greg, the first game and the last game of the wild card round kind of duds, but everything in between is absolutely crazy. I fear just in terms of recency, the Cowboys, what they did on offense to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we've talked about the Bucs and kind of their situation throughout the course of the season, but beyond the first 2 possessions of the Cowboys game where they start with 2 punts and then rattle off in very, very short order 4 straight touchdown drives. The job that obviously they have great personnel, but the job that Kellen Moore, I thought, did in calling that game as good as anybody I saw this weekend.
Yeah, and I always, again, that may well be true. When I watch tape, it's funny. When plays work, it always looks like it's a well-called game. And obviously, as you know, when plays don't work, it looks like it's a poorly called game. So I never know how to respond to that, simply because I'm not there for the process of putting a game plan together. So, you just don't know. Some people could have said after the first 2 series, Kellen Moore's an idiot. What's going on here? And then, as you said, it kicked in because after his first 3 incompletions on the first possession, they started their first possession 3 straight incompletions and punted. Prescott was 25 for 30. You'd say that's pretty good under any circumstance, and obviously 4 touchdowns. Now the Bucs were aggressive. They became more aggressive as the game went on. They started playing a lot of zone and became more aggressive as it was evident that they were struggling to stop the passing game. And I thought Prescott, who, as we know, the week prior played really fast, and he was even fast early in this game. But I thought with the final drive of the second quarter, that's when I thought that he really started to settle in. And you could almost see, to me anyway, watching tape, that's when you could see him slow down, process what he was seeing with more clarity. He began to play slower mentally, and that slowed his body down. You hear in all sports, they see it in slow motion or it's slowing down. You could almost see that watching the tape with Prescott. It just started to slow down. And they had some really nice concepts. I thought the Schultz 22-yard touchdown was a beautifully designed play against cover three. And the way that, because, obviously they got the ball to Schultz. We don't know if that play was called with the idea that, hey, he's the primary or not. But the way it mapped out, he became the primary, and it was just beautifully designed with the complementary routes to get him the ball on the seam versus cover three.
And as you mentioned, we don't know necessarily the progressions on these plays, but like the way that they were able to regularly get Schultz involved. Yep. I mean, he was a matchup problem for Tampa. It felt like all day long.
Yeah, and then Lamb got involved as well. He made some play. They obviously had a bust on the Lamb touchdown late in the game. And then Prescott, we saw Prescott make the second reaction throw to Schultz for the touchdown, which we hadn't seen a lot of that with Prescott in recent weeks. And, he's not, he's certainly not an explosive athlete at this point in his career. One could argue he's a little stiff at this point. He's had lower body injuries. But he can move. He can move functionally enough, but we just haven't seen that in recent weeks. So I'm sure if you're a Cowboys fan, that was very good to see that he moved. He was patient. He moved with purpose. It wasn't one of those random moves. He moved with purpose. He knew what he was looking at. He was patient on the move. And normally, a lot of quarterbacks are not patient on the move because everything starts speeding up. He was patient on the move.
Yeah. Their reward, the Cowboys, will be to play the San Francisco 49ers, who obviously it was a competitive game. I thought Seattle had a couple of a competitive game at the start, and obviously things started to get away from the Seahawks a little bit as Brock Purdy made some of the most impressive throws that I've seen, and not even taking his pedigree, for lack of a better term, into account, Greg. What they are doing offensively in San Francisco and to the untrained eye, from my standpoint, I don't see anywhere where they're not doing as much of the offense with Brock Purdy as they were with Jimmy Garoppolo throughout the course of the season.
Well, a lot of the routes are the same.
Right.
What Purdy gives you, which is just more glittery to watch, is he gives you the play action boot, so there's movement, and he gives you second reaction movement, which Garoppolo couldn't do. So he gives you two things that they could not do with Garoppolo, so it makes their offense more expansive. But in terms of the pass game, where it's pretty much drop back or play action, it's a lot of the same concepts. But I think one thing that makes the 49ers offense so difficult to defend, Buck, is that all 5 eligible receivers in their 21 personnel grouping can line up anywhere in the formation. They are all multi-locational, and so you as a defense have to decide a couple of things. Number one, are you going to stay in your base defense? Meaning, are you going to play with 4 defensive backs? If you choose to do that, they can do with their personnel location, they can create matchups, or they can show Brock Purdy zone before the snap of the ball, and now he knows before the snap he has zone. Mm-hmm. So if you want to play that way, if you want to go nickel because you're feeling, hey, they can really throw the ball effectively out of this, then keep in mind that they're still a run-first operation. Everything starts with their run game, and then they can run the ball at you in multiple ways. So they're very difficult to defend because a combination of personnel, their ability to line up anywhere in the formation, and certainly Purdy has been really, really efficient in running this offense.
It's not very often when the term multi-locational is used, the first player that pops into my mind is a fullback, Greg. But Kyle Juszczyk in that offense, there's so many fun ways that they use that guy.
And if you notice, it's not necessarily, he can catch balls, obviously, and he does on occasion. But when you think of Juszczyk, you're not thinking of, man, they're just going to throw it to him. But he is a really, really good receiver, and you can't just assume he's not going to get the ball. But, obviously Samuel, McCaffrey, Ayuk, Kittle can line up anywhere. So they have a lot of players that can line up anywhere within the formation, and that just makes the defense have to decide a lot of things before the ball snapped. And I know I have said this to you before, but one of the main things you're trying to do with any quarterback is give them as much information as possible before the ball is snapped. If you can do that, you're making their job relatively easier.
So we that will be the game that caps off the divisional round, but it'll start with the Jags and the Chiefs. Chiefs and Eagles obviously getting into their first playoff action with the first round bye. Greg, the Trevor Lawrence experience on Saturday night was both disastrous and then incredible all at the same time. Yep. I thought some of the disguises that the Chargers were using as he threw those 4 interceptions early on in that game. I mean, it was almost completely understandable. They had that poor quarterback in absolute hell, but the way that they figured it out throughout the course of that game, I think that was probably my favorite game of the weekend, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's funny because I watched that tape and I thought that the interceptions were kind of interesting plays. As I've said to you many times, you always have to look at interceptions individually. We know his first interception that came on an RPO and the ball got tipped. It actually got tipped twice. Mm-hmm. I think it was an RPO. I'm trying to remember, but it was not a poor decision by Lawrence, given that the slot corner Callahan was. That was the first. The first one came on an RPO. Yes, I'm correct. Yep. But the second one, starting with the Samuel interceptions, I think it was the middle one that came where he truly did not read the coverage, because it was kind of a cover 2 look, and he threw it basically to Samuel, who was the flat defender, and he just didn't read the coverage. The others, I think were totally explainable, and I didn't view it as Lawrence didn't know what he was doing or didn't see it. I thought they were just, either not great throws or good plays, so, and then in the second half, it was an odd second half because when you're up that big, you tend to play a lot more zone, feeling that, hey, if this team is going to score, if they can take 12, 13 plays and eat up 7, 8 minutes, that helps us, but there were a lot of quick game timing throws, which is what they started on the final possession of the second quarter when they scored a touchdown. And, that kept Lawrence in rhythm. They got completions. They moved the chains. They went some no huddle. They were lucky on a couple of plays where the ball placement wasn't really precise and receivers made catches. But I thought they stayed patient. It was really interesting watching it. They stayed patient because he wanted to develop a rhythm with not only Lawrence, but the offense, rather than just try to look for explosive plays. I mean, when you start your third quarter possession, okay, and you're down 27-7, I believe.
Yes.
They went on a 14-play, 89-yard drive that ate up more than 7 minutes of clock. Now, if you're the Chargers, you're not saying, wow, that's wonderful that you just went 89 yards and scored, but you're also thinking, you just ate up 7 minutes of clock that you're not going to get back. Right. And we're still ahead by 2 scores. And, ideally, we're going to score some points, which, turned out not to be the case, and probably cost some people their jobs. But, you don't view that as a terrible thing. What you're concerned about is the explosive plays. And of course, they did get one on the 39-yard touchdown to Zay Jones, which actually Lawrence read the coverage This was a really good job by Trevor Lawrence because this was no huddle tempo, and he read the coverage. And from film study, he knew exactly what it was. And then he knew what route he could call that would not likely be covered. That was just a case where the route concept just beat the coverage, and he knew it.
Excited. I mean, a lot of exciting play from a lot of young quarterbacks who came into this postseason, and obviously now down to 8 teams. But the guy on the other side, we've talked about Patrick Mahomes, the efficiency with which he's playing the position this year, Greg, the way that he's operating and in rhythm. And obviously, I mean, he's probably going to end up being the NFL MVP. But in this game, the matchup against the Jags defense, what do you like about the Chiefs against the Jags?
Well, they played week 10. One issue here for the Jags is they're not very good on third down. That's been a problem all season. They're near the bottom of the league in third down defense, and the Chiefs are second in the league in third down offense behind the Bills, near 50%. The Bills are the only team that were over 50% third down conversion, but the Chiefs were just below that. And I think third down is going to be critical because the Chiefs convert third downs, and Mahomes can convert them from the pocket. He can convert them moving outside the pocket. They convert. And as I said, the Jags have not been good with their third down defense this year. And if they can't get the Chiefs off the field, that's going to be a problem in this game.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that one. Meanwhile, the other number one seed, the Giants at the Eagles, again, a lot of divisional matchups that ended up working out throughout the course of this postseason thus far. It's tough. I mean, a lot of fun quarterback performances, but Daniel Jones being the best player on the field for the Giants against the Vikings, the way that they had that offense rolling, Greg, the way that they've used not just his ability as a passer, but his ability as a runner all year long, obviously showing up. He had over 70 yards on the ground as well as a 300-yard passing performance. The Giant, we don't spend a ton of time, at least on this podcast, on the Giants because just not a team that we often discuss. The Titans didn't play them, but the job that they have done in getting the best out of Daniel Jones this year has been really, really fun to watch.
And they've made some adjustments, sort of conceptually, which kind of started with their Week 16 game against Minnesota. Obviously, they did not know at that point they'd be playing the Vikings again in the playoffs, but starting then, they made a couple of changes on either side of the ball. And just quickly, Brian Daboll at that point said, you know what, Daniel Jones, I'm going to put the ball in your hands now. We've been playing all season with you, not really throwing it a whole lot, trying to massage our way through games, letting our defense be pretty good with Wink Martindale, whose MO is normally aggressive man coverage, pressure. But beginning with that Week 16 game, Brian Daboll clearly said, hey, you know what, let's throw, because that Week 16 game was a close game all the way, okay? And Jones had 49 dropbacks. And then, so they've asked Daniel Jones to do a lot more, and that continued through this playoff game. And, he's much more right now as we speak, and we don't know what they're going to do on Saturday night. You never know what the future is, but as we speak today, this is Daniel Jones' offense more than Saquon Barkley's offense.
Which is just crazy. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem at all.
Just a crazy thing to say, given what Daniel Jones had been to this point, and obviously Saquon getting right this year was, no given thing until we saw the way. We saw the way that he's just continued to sustain this high level of play.
The other point I was going to make was defensively, they have made a dramatic turn. This was a man-to-man defense with pressure. Since Week 15, after the loss to the Eagles, Week 14, okay, they have changed dramatically. They were heavy cover one, okay, among the highest percentage in the league. Now, since Week 15, they are among the lowest percentage of cover one in the league. They play zone coverage now, majority zone with a ton of split safety. And they don't blitz very much. So again, I'm not in the building, so I can't tell you why Wink Martindale, who's been doing this for a long time and knows defense way better than I do, why he made the change, but that change has been made.
Oh, and just because we've talked about Wink Martindale before in a variety of different jobs at this stage, it's always, I think it's cool to see those kind of adjustments from a coach who's been in the league for as long as he has, and obviously is recognize something, whatever that may be. We, as you mentioned, we're not privy to, but to see those kind of adjustments play out and obviously work to their benefit. And also it helps if you have to, the game that Dexter Lawrence played is
oh my God,
most ridiculous things I've ever seen, especially from a dude at the nose.
And do you know that he's played over 800 snaps this year? Think about a guy that big playing over 800 snaps. Normally guys that big play 20, 25 snaps a game. He's played over 800 snaps. And this is just regular season numbers. So that means in 17 games, he played over 800 snaps. That's remarkable. And it doesn't seem to get tired. The final play of the game, which was the fourth down play where Cousins threw the ball, I forget who he threw it to. It was the tight end, Hawkinson. Mm-hmm. Lawrence, he was the pass rusher. He got inside. He was, I'm not saying he's the reason he made that throw, but he probably was. And the other player who needs to be mentioned, he's critical to that defense, is Xavier McKinney. And now that he's back, he played every snap this past week. You can line him up on the back end. You can line him up in the box. You can match him up to tight ends. You can even match him up to slot receivers, which he did a lot when he was at Alabama. So he's a really important piece of this defense.
They've done a lot of out of Adoree. Adoree's availability has been up and down this year.
But and they played high percentage zone, but they did line him up over Jefferson. Even though it wasn't press man, they did line him up over Justin Jefferson, which begs the question, will he line up over A.J. Brown? The Eagles have another really good wideout in Devonta Smith, or will they just play sides because there's two really good wideouts?
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game and difficult. The Eagles obviously getting the better of the Giants in both of the regular season matchups, but so difficult for any NFL team to beat another 3 times in the same season. I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Greg, and by the way, Greg, the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, no injury designation. Seems like
I'm told
he's going to be.
he's fine. I was down there Monday and I was told he's fine. So again, they could say that. They don't have to say anything else. And
Sure.
and I don't always believe, it's like some people do. They believe everything a coach or a personnel guy tells them. I'm not one of those guys. They can tell me anything they want. But my guess is he's probably fine after 2 weeks.
Either way, will be a fun one to watch between the two NFC East teams. Bengals and Bills, obviously, a matchup that we were all excited for in the regular season. The circumstances with Damar Hamlin, thank God, he's doing well as far as his health and well-being is concerned. But now we'll see it take place with the Bengals at Buffalo. Greg, we've talked about the way that the Bengals have figured out, basically problem solved throughout the course of the season and been so effective and efficient with their passing game in particular. Buffalo showed, I think, especially on defense, they're a little more flawed than I think just general conversation would
I would agree with that.
to believe. But still, when you have Josh Allen who can make throws to Stephon Diggs like that, like you're always going to have an opportunity. What do you like about this game?
This is a fascinating game. This game we could talk about for 3 hours. I mean, it appears the Bengals will have 3 backup offensive linemen playing.
Yeah.
And, the last couple of weeks, they played the Ravens twice. Obviously, it's a division opponent, but they really haven't pushed the ball down the field. It's almost been Burrow just taking completions, 6-7 yard plays. His longest completion this past week was 19 yards, which is very un-Burrow and un-Bengal like. I think he's just getting rid of the football. He's trying to camouflage and compensate for the fact that the O-line now is a little bit of a problem and could well be. Although the flip side of that is the Bills don't necessarily have a great pass rush with their 4 down linemen. And, whether that comes back to haunt them now in the playoffs, I guess we'll find out. So they've added in Edmonds on occasion. Milano has been a blitzer on occasion, very effective. He's very good at that. So and sometimes it's just what I call a 4-man zone exchange, where Milano or Edmonds will end up being the 4th rusher and they'll drop out at the end. So it's still a 4-man rush, but they're trying to get either Edmonds or Milano on a back based on how they set up their front. And then, as you said, you get Josh Allen, who, you always walk a fine line between precision and instincts. You don't want to take away his instincts. Obviously you don't want him to throw interceptions. No coach says let's throw interceptions, but he's going to do that on occasion. Hopefully he doesn't in this game, but he certainly can make throws that, number one, not a lot of people would attempt and not a lot of people would complete. And he can do that anytime. And his mentality is such that it doesn't matter whether it's the first series or the 4th quarter, he just plays. Yeah. And, he's going to make throws. The touchdown he threw to Gabe Davis in the corner of the end zone, which put them ahead, I believe, 34-24 at the time. I don't know if people realize how hard a throw that was. He makes a lot of those that start to look easy, and
he just makes all of it look so damn easy, Greg.
Yeah, and people don't realize how hard those throws are.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to go back to the Bills defense quickly because they've been without Von Miller for so long at this point, Greg. And you bring up the inability to get a pass rush. Obviously, they'll be without Micah Hyde in this game as well. Those are 2 really, really critical defenders for what they've been trying to accomplish when they put this roster together. And obviously, it's kind of bubbled up throughout the course of the second half of the season.
Yeah, and we'll see if that becomes a big factor in the game. Who I thought played really, really well, and he came in when Dane Jackson got hurt, is I thought Kaiir Elam played really well at corner in this game, opposite Tre'Davious White. And White is their boundary corner. So he's going to get Jamar Chase quite a bit in this game because Chase is not always the boundary X for the Bengals, but more often than not. So that matchup will happen in this game. And we'll see. Elam played really well, and like I said, at this point, we're speaking on a Wednesday. I don't know what Dane Jackson's status is. They play a Sunday game, so they have time if he's going to be okay.
Right.
But Elam played well. And look, you're familiar with Elam being from the SEC. He's a long, athletic corner. I mean, I think he's got really good corner traits. He's been up and down this year, as many rookie corners are, but he played very well this past week.
No question. To go back to Josh Allen, you mentioned just getting out there and playing, and obviously he's physically capable of doing so much.
But pretty much anything. Yeah.
Basically anything he wants. But I think in kind of the discussion that we've had this season around Mahomes, and I'm not trying to draw comparisons, but just in terms of the discipline and the efficiency of playing the quarterback position. Josh Allen has obviously made incredible strides since coming into the NFL.
Right.
But I think that's the thing, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong here. I think that's the thing where he could stand to do some more improvement. They can all improve at any given point, I suppose, but I think that's the thing that kind of pops into my head when I watch him play.
And I think it becomes game specific. There are games where he's efficient, where he doesn't throw picks and he's very efficient. And then there are other games where, for instance, the first interception he threw by Xavier Howard was clearly on Josh Allen. Without going into the details of the play, because people need to see it, but that was on Josh Allen. The second one was not really on Josh Allen. He threw to Beasley. It was good coverage, but he hit Beasley between the numbers. It just popped up in the air. Certainly the play where he fumbled to start the second half, that play is very debatable as to what happened. I do not believe that he was responsible for the blitz. I looked at that play 20 times. But the point is, when that happens, then you just got to go down and go to the next play. It was first down. That's where you just have to say, okay, the defense won, take the sack and go on to the next play. You don't have to try to get out of it and make something special happen when you're 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage and it's first down on the first play of the second half. Those are the plays where you say, you know what, just live for the next play. But again, where do you draw the line as a coach? Because then you're getting into his instincts and his feel and the things that he does that are really special. I don't know how to I'm not a coach. I don't know how to coach that. Obviously you don't want him. When the negative plays happen, everybody's going to say you don't want that. That's not a profound statement. Of course, no one wants that. But that's not so easy just to say don't do that, because then maybe you take away from this truly special plays that he makes.
No, I have no interest in nitpicking Josh Allen. He's too much fun to watch as is. But all of these games are going to be incredible. There's no better way to get ready for them than the NFL Matchup Show with Greg, Sal Pal, and Darius Butler. You can set your DVR. You can catch it on ESPN on Saturday morning. And of course, on demand on ESPN Plus as well. Greg, Wild Card Weekend is always, I think, just because it's so much and all.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This to me is the best. Is the best, truly the best weekend, because it's not too much, and it's and obviously then you get these winners go to the championship weekend, which is just Sunday. But no, I'm really looking forward to these games, and hopefully they're competitive. That's all I want is competitive, good games that we're late in the fourth quarter and you're kind of sitting on the edge of your seat.
The NFL seems to always find a way to deliver on that. So I think we're in for a treat. Greg, enjoy the football. Appreciate the time as always, and we'll do it again next Wednesday.
All right, Buck. Appreciate it. Thank you.